Tense standoffs, civilians dragged from their homes, soldiers turning high-powered water hoses on demonstrators, bulldozers demolishing residences. You might think this is the scene of some occupying regime trying to suppress a chaotic revolution. But what if I told you that these were Israeli citizens clashing with their own democracy over one of the most revolutionary and lasting peace treaties of the 20th century? How did the promise of peace ignite a crisis that many feared could lead to a civil war? Hey guys, I'm Jacob, and today we're going to explore an Israeli conflict most people have never heard of, the heated evacuation of the seacoast town of Yamit in the Sinai Peninsula. It all started in 1978 when Israel and Egypt signed a historic peace treaty known as the Camp David Accords. Just some perspective, for any Arab nation to sign anything concerning Israel other than a death certificate was inconceivable at the time. Just imagine Donald Trump and CNN reporters deciding to hug it out at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. But Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin and then Egyptian President Anwar Sadat somehow not only worked out a deal, but won the Nobel Peace Prize in doing so. For the specifics, watch our Begin and Sadat video. The gist of the agreement was that Israel would return the Sinai Peninsula, which it had captured from Egypt in the 1967 Six-Day War. In return, the first peace between Israel and one of its surrounding Arab neighbors. If the treaty were upheld, it would be transformative for Israel, a nation that had been forced to constantly fight for its existence from even before its inception. But if Egypt went back on its deal, it would leave Israel vulnerable, potentially leading to disaster. Since the Sinai's capture in 1967, the Israeli public had been told that holding the 23,000 square miles of desert was essential as a defense buffer between Israel and Egypt. Up to that point, every major war against Israel had been led by Egypt and had been launched through the Sinai. After the Six-Day War, Israeli citizens almost immediately began moving into areas all over the peninsula. They were standard bearers of a legacy of pioneers, and the Sinai was their new frontier. With a determined commitment, they risked the danger of possible Egyptian aggression to Israel's southern border, though in reality they were very protected by Israel's army and air force. They had to put in time, money, and energy, turning arid desert into flourishing agricultural villages. Communities were built with full infrastructure, roads, pipelines, greenhouses, all practically self-sustaining model cities in Sinai. But with the signing of Camp David, the permanence of all that came into question. Then, in 1981, Sadat was assassinated. The agreement with Israel had made him the most hated leader in the Arab world, and the chances that any successor would hold up Camp David seemed slim to none. But when Hosni Mubarak became president, a man with no fondness for Israel, he upheld the agreement, saying, "We succeeded in compelling the Jews to do what we wanted. We received all of our land back, up to the last grain of sand. We've outwitted them, and what have we given them in return? A piece of paper." Clearly, there were reasons to be concerned about Mubarak's commitment to his predecessor's peace plan. But Begin kept his end of the agreement, insisting, "Pacta sunt servanda," the observance of an international agreement is an absolute duty. And so, despite the doubts of follow-through, the Camp David plan came to pass. But in order to fulfill Israel's part of the agreement, the Sinai residents were going to have to abandon everything they had invested in. Most communities conceded, with one notable exception, a town called Yamit. Yamit was a beautiful resort town in the northern part of the peninsula, just south of Gaza, with a population of about 2,500. Most of the people were idealistic Israelis looking for affordable housing and were dedicated to developing the land. For years, they had been assured that the Sinai settlements would never be given up. Begin himself even declared publicly that he intended to retire there when his term in office ended, just reaffirming his commitment. So it's understandable why there was such backlash. The withdrawal process started in April of 1982, led by Defense Minister Ariel Sharon. Quoted as saying, "We are not retreating from Sinai, we are demonstrating our desire to move forward towards peace." Sharon's attitude was shared overwhelmingly by the majority of Israelis. But the citizens of Yamit were another matter. They barricaded themselves in their apartments and others clung to rooftops. IDF soldiers had to forcibly carry people from their homes and drag them onto buses to be taken out of Sinai. Political sympathizers came from all over Israel to infiltrate Yamit in an attempt to sabotage the evacuation. Settlers even managed to sneak back into the city after being removed, forcing Begin to make the difficult decision to level the settlement entirely. He ordered the demolition of homes, greenhouses, orchards, and more in order to ensure that no lives were lost in a possible clash between residents and the Egyptians. But there was a steep price tag. It meant sacrificing the $80 million, $200 million by today's standards, that Egypt had agreed to pay for the infrastructure Israelis had built. One religious extremist group even vowed to kill themselves rather than be evacuated, locking themselves in a bunker with explosives. Some believed the conflict could escalate to an all-out Israeli civil war. With images of Jew fighting Jew, the conflict dominated the national conversation. But Begin stuck to his guns. Even though the soldiers used force, no shots were fired. And while the evacuation was heartbreaking, the protesters ultimately chose to relent rather than resort to violence. With no significant injuries, two essential tenets of the state became clear. One, Israelis would not shed the blood of their brothers, and two, Israel as a nation would make tremendous sacrifices for the sake of peace. The event, though peacefully resolved, left a traumatic impact on the country felt even today. On the one hand, Israel still has a stable relationship with Egypt regarding trade, commerce, and security, and the two countries haven't had any real military conflict since. But on the other hand, as controversy mounts surrounding residences in the areas of the West Bank, many Israeli citizens now live with the possibility that one day their homes and communities may be taken away. Now, you may be thinking, so what? For a lasting and enduring peace, why not trade some land? Well, let's look at a similar situation just 2 decades later, also led by Ariel Sharon, then serving as prime minister. In 2005, Israel pulled out all of its 17 communities from Gush Katif on the southern end of Gaza. The Israeli army forcibly removed over 8,500 residents, leaving behind schools, office buildings, factories, and greenhouses equipped with state-of-the-art technology, estimated to be worth over $23 billion. It was all turned over to the Palestinians living in Gaza in the hopes that it would be used for the development of new peaceful communities. But instead, the terrorist organization Hamas came to power, ousting the PLO and creating a terror state. Within just a few years, Israel would suffer 3 wars in Gaza, as well as thousands of rocket attacks launched from Gaza every year that followed. Millions of dollars meant for aid would be used to construct miles of tunnels to circumvent Israeli border security to perpetrate devastating attacks on Israeli civilians. Luckily, Yamit was a gamble that paid off, but the policy of land for peace is far from a guarantee. It can lead to resolution and partnership, but can also result in vulnerability and tragedy, and Israel has seen both. As Ariel Sharon put it, we extend our hand towards peace. Our people are committed to peace, and we know that peace entails painful compromise for both sides. There may be tremendous tensions within the country itself, leading to fierce arguments and internal fighting, but Israel has demonstrated that it refuses to fall into civil war. And though the mark of the Yamit evacuation is a trauma still felt to this day, Israel's unity, often strained but still intact, signifies that commitment to peace.